Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. You may be seated. Great to have all of you. A special welcome to our first-time guest. First-time guest, you get a free gift before you leave today. And so I'll tell you at the end how to get it. But so don't leave without letting us say thank you and welcome you officially to Grace. Hope you'll come back and be with us often. Let's talk about beginning a project. You know, when you begin a project, no matter what that project is, there are different ways that different personalities respond to the beginning of a project. So I put this in your notes, and here's what we want to do. In your sermon notes, there are 4 options. When you begin a new project, and you got to be honest, which one of these describes you? All right, are you ready? All right, number 1 is this you. Ready, fire, aim. All right, if you do that, that's called a premature launch. And I know some of you are that way. You get so eager, you know, you get ready, and then you fire, and you go, oh, wait, I better aim at this thing. All right? All right, how many of you are number 2? Ready, ready, ready. That's called procrastination. You know, I'm going to get that thing started one of these days. All right, how about number 3? Aim, aim, aim. All right, what's that? It's fear of failure. You know, you're aiming, you know you need to get started, but, oh, what if something goes wrong? And you never get around to doing the project. Number 4, oh, I know some of you are here. Fire, fire, fire. That's called inadequate preparation. You don't do any preparing, you just start. You just start and things kind of fall apart. All right, now which one are you? Let's do a real quick survey. How many number 1s? Nobody's going to be honest, are they? All right, number 2, how many are 2s? Okay. All right, how many of you tend to be number 3? All right, now, how many? Go ahead. How many of you tend to be a 4? Fire, 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 fire. Yeah, okay. Thank you for your honesty. Those who did not raise your hand, shame on you for not being. Hey, welcome. Welcome to week 2 of Living Your Dash. Now, when you begin to live your dash and really begin to find and start fulfilling God's purpose, that unique purpose for your life, here's what you're going to learn. One of the greatest challenges will be a step called confirmation. Confirmation. Now, remember in our last study, we saw Nehemiah, our guide for this journey. We saw Nehemiah catch God's vision, and his vision was to travel to Jerusalem and build that wall around Jerusalem so that the inhabitants would have protection from invading armies. Now, some of you may, even today, feel a lot like Nehemiah. Already in your heart, you feel a strong passion and a strong sense that God is calling you to a specific ministry or an area or a task or a project. You've already seen the need. It moves your heart. You have a passion for it. And already you're sensing, okay, this is what God wants me to do. Now, what do you need to do next? Well, you need to follow the wisdom of Nehemiah. Even though Nehemiah had a strong sense, God is calling me to build this wall, even when you feel that way, it doesn't mean you need to run out and start building the wall tomorrow morning. Nehemiah can be a great teacher and a guide at this point in the journey to help us find and fulfill God's purpose for our lives. Nehemiah can teach us how to get confirmation before we get too deep into the project. How do you get confirmation? And what does that look like? Well, see, if you don't get confirmation, you can get easily and quickly derailed from fulfilling what God has called you to do. 2 examples here. Number 1, you can get ahead of God. You can kind of get ahead of God as God is rolling out the plan. You can get ahead of God, and so you're doing that ready, fire, aim, or you're doing the fire, fire, fire. Or Or if you don't get confirmation, I've learned you can actually get behind God's leading. God is out ahead of you, wanting you to do more, and you're holding back. You're going ready, 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 or I want to aim some more, aim. And with that response, you actually can get behind God. Now, what does it take to get the kind of confirmation we're talking about in our life purpose? Well, Nehemiah today is going to provide a very clear and practical answer. So let's get ready to learn what does it take to confirm your life purpose. Are you ready? Let's dig in. Challenge number 1, honestly appraise the project. You got to be like an appraiser. You got to honestly appraise the project. I'm sure most of us in this room have heard about the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Well, have you ever heard of the midnight ride of Nehemiah? Let me read it to you. Chapter 2, if you're following in your Bibles, Nehemiah 2, verses 11 to 16. I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. I had not told anyone, now listen to that, I had not told anyone what God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. By night, I went through the valley gate toward the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved on toward the Fountain Gate and the King's Pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through. So I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had said nothing to the Jews or the priests or nobles or officials or any others who would be doing the work. Now, isn't that amazing? Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem. His first act after arriving is to inspect the condition of the wall that he's to rebuild. But notice, Nehemiah, I believe, demonstrates great wisdom in honestly appraising the situation, honestly appraising the challenge that stands before him. And notice, several times in those verses, Nehemiah does not announce his intentions publicly. Matter of fact, he doesn't tell anybody what is in his heart to do. He tells nobody. He doesn't pull out his shovel on day one and start digging. No. He appraises the situation. You know what you call that? Preparation. Preparation. It always pays to invest the time and energy to inspect the task before you, to do the research before you get too deep into a project. Now, you know what this demands. You're not going to like what I'm about to say. It demands patience. Patience. I realize that is a word some of you no longer have in your dictionary. If you want to do a great work for God, you got to put patience back in your dictionary. You've got to learn to be patient. Nobody likes to do that, but it pays great dividends in the end. Now, how many of us know of people, and my guess is as I describe this person, names are going to pop into your head right now. How many of you know this person? They get all excited about a new venture, a new project. And so they run out and they immediately, hire a graphic artist. They create a graphic and they buy 1,000 business cards and they run down and they rent office space and they get this thing going, whatever it is. And then you see them 6 months later and you say, hey, what's going on? And you realize they're into a new project and they've hired somebody to do a new graphic and they bought 1,000 business cards and they rented some more office space. And It's like every 6 months you see these people. And you go, hey, what's up? Well, I'm into something new. Well, what happened to that project you were working on 6 months ago? Well, we kind of got that started, but it just, we never could get it off the ground. I know people who go through their entire life with this cycle. Businessmen and businesswomen, they get an idea, rather than do the preparation work and the research work and patiently wait as things come together, they go out and it's ready, fire, aim. Well, that didn't work. Ready, fire, aim. And they just cycle through. Anybody know business people like that? It's really sad, especially those. I'm thinking of one gentleman who has passed away now. He cycled literally his entire life with buy the business cards, try to launch, didn't plan, failed. And it just cycled through his entire life. God does not want that to happen to any of us. So here's the moral of the story in your notes. You ready? When we neglect honest evaluation on the front end, we generally experience failure on the back end. Let's allow Nehemiah to guide us here. First thing Nehemiah did, he really appraised the situation. He inspected the condition. What's the challenge before me? Let's do the same. Honestly appraise the project. Now, once we do that, we're ready for step 2. You ready? Then you passionately share the vision. Once you appraise the condition of the project, then you can passionately start sharing the vision. Once the inspection tour of Nehemiah is complete, now Nehemiah, he's got the information, he's done his homework, he is ready to share the vision. See, one thing he discovered on the midnight ride of Nehemiah, he realized, whoa, this is a big project. In fact, the rubble, the passage just said, in certain areas was so bad, he could not even get his horse through. The rubble, can you imagine, just to visualize the rubble being so much that you couldn't get a horse through? He had to back up and go around another way. So Nehemiah realizes this is a huge project. I cannot do it on my own. I'm going to need a lot of organization. I'm going to need a lot of help in this project. And that is when he begins to share with key individuals so that he will not only get confirmation, listen carefully, but buy-in. See, Nehemiah needs more than people saying, oh yeah, Nehemiah, great idea. Great idea to build that wall. God bless you, be warmed and filled. Now he needs more than that. He needs buy-in from key leaders. Watch what happens, chapter 2, verses 17 and 18. Then I said to them, who's the them? Just above it, it's the nobles, the officials, the rulers, the leaders of that community. I said to them, you see the trouble we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us, don't read over that. He didn't say let me. He said, let us rebuild. He's getting buy-in. Let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me, and what the king, remember King Artaxerxes, had said to me? They replied, the officials, let us, don't read over that too quick. Notice they don't say, oh yeah, Nehemiah, great idea, go for it, man. No, they replied, let us start rebuilding. So they began. Who? Not Nehemiah. They. Hear the buy-in? They began this good work. What do we learn here? Very important to get buy-in. But do you have passion? I want you to notice, did you notice the passion in Nehemiah's voice? Let us. Our city is in ruins. This is horrible. It's disgraceful. We're living in a shameful situation. We've got to fix the problem. Nehemiah describes the need, and he describes, guys, this is no longer acceptable. Then he outlines his solution. His solution is, we need to rebuild the wall. It can't be me, it's got to be we. But here's the good news. King Artaxerxes, the guy I used to work for, he has taken care, he has supplied the materials. Listen, I've done the work, I've done the research, I've got the resources. We can do this if we work together. Passion. What arouses your passion? Think about it. What is it? If you had to pull out a 3x5 card and list 3 things that arouse your passion, what would be number 1? Would it be the whole issue of abortion? Either helping to stop abortion or ministering to individuals who have gone through the painful circumstances of an abortion? Is it abused children? When you read in the paper about abused children, does that just tear your heart out enough to arouse a passion to do something? Maybe it's drug and alcohol addiction. You've seen it in your friends, you've had it in your family, and you say, you know, if I could, I would love to do something to minister to people to help them get out of addiction. Maybe it's homelessness or unemployment. You know, maybe you have gone through unemployment before, and you know the depression that comes with that, and you know the challenges that come with that. Boy, when you hear of other people who are unemployed and they're having trouble finding that job, does that just do something inside of you and say, man, I wish I could come alongside somebody like that and help them learn how to do an interview, how to do a resume, how to get a job? I learned the hard way. Maybe I could help somebody learn an easier way. Maybe failed marriages. Now you say, man, if I could ever mentor somebody in marriage so they don't make the mistakes I made when I went through a divorce, man, I would love to minister to people. What is it that's number 1 on your list? I'll never forget, boy, it's been probably 15 years, something like that, when Phil Rubenstein would come by. You guys remember Phil Rubenstein? Pastor Ruby, Harvest Ministry. Well, I remember before Harvest Ministry was Harvest Ministry. And Ruby would come by my office. And he'd come in, and anybody know Ruby? Has a little bit of passion, you know, a little bit of energy, you know, almost to the level of being obnoxious, you know. And if Ruby were here, I would tell him that right here, because he would go, yeah, you're right. He'd come in my office, and he'd say, Rick, we got to do something. Roswell, we need a food bank here. There's people who are hurting, they're starving, they don't have enough food for their kids. And man, he would just pour out passion. And you know, I'd say, well, I agree with you. You know, there's a need. So what are we going to do about it? Well, here's what, you know, and then he would start laying it out. Now, I got to tell you, in the beginning, there were no plans. There was just passion. Okay? Now, the good news is Ruby slowly developed the plans. You know, and we helped him out here and found him a little corner to put a phone in so he could get Harvest Ministry started. And then it just grew, and they had a dilapidated place where they were trying to do the ministry. There was no way that was going to happen. And so I said, Ruby, you know, what we got to do, we got to get key individuals and form a board for you. And so we found those key individuals, and he put together a board and set up a nonprofit, 501c3. He went through all the steps. And then today, if you drive down Main Street, you will see a beautiful building with a sign called Harvest Ministry. Now, it all started with a passion, but that passion had to be kind of bridled. Couldn't be like a wild horse. Ruby. It had to be bridled, but wow, once you got all that energy focused and under control, the end result was a nonprofit with a great board of directors that ministers to thousands of people not only in Roswell, but surrounding communities come into the food bank. Took years to get there, but it's there. Why? He did the preparation. Passion must lead to preparation. You know, another example, I remember Laura Peshka, Reflections in Recovery. I remember when Laura would come by the office and she'd say, Rick, I've got this idea, and it's just, kind of burns in me. Women who are like coming out of jail and prison, women who are drug and alcohol addiction. It's a rampant problem in our community. We need to help these individuals, but she would always say, especially the women. I have a heart for the women. And so it was fun to kind of, in a very small way, help Laurel get her ideas together and get her focus together. And she set up her nonprofit, and she got a great board of directors, and they began to think together and dream together. And the next thing you know, they've got a beautiful building out on West Alameda, and they not only have a Reflections and Recovery ministry every Tuesday night that meets at Christ Church with tons of people who come and do Christian 12-step, but now out on Alameda, they've got a home now for women, and they go through kind of a school of really learning and developing to help them learn how to get a job, how to clean up their life. And as a matter of fact, guess what's happening this afternoon at 2? They're graduating 2 of their women today. Yeah, that is exciting. Now what does this mean? I promise you, there was a lot of work, a lot of preparation, getting buy-in from key individuals. But guess where it all started? A passion that was born in a heart. God birthed those passions. So here's the moral of the story in your notes. Very important. A vision without a passion is just another suggestion. And guess what? We got plenty of suggestions. I get suggestions all the time. Hey, Rick, we ought to do this. Hey, Rick, we ought to do that. Being interpreted, Rick, you ought to do this. Rick, you ought to do that. I can always tell the difference between a suggestion and a passion. A passion says, I care about it, count me in the lead. I'll put it together, I'll do the work. Will you help me? Will you equip me? But I will take the lead. By the way, you can expect to meet your share of opposition along the way in fulfilling your vision. Look at verses 19 and 20. But when Sanballat, see, I was hoping y'all would remember from last week. We now have 3 enemies, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, and we boo whenever we see the bad guys. But when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, and Geshem, the Arab, heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you are doing, they asked. Are you rebelling against the king? I answered them by saying, the God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding, but as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it. Nanny, nanny, boo-boo. Okay, I added the last line, but that's inferred. Nehemiah, he had Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem, and guess what? I promise you, you will have your opposition along the way. You just got to learn how to handle it. And guess what? We're going to learn how to handle opposition in week 3 of Living Your Dash next week. So let's hold off for there. All right, so to confirm your life purpose, number 2, passionately share the vision. Number 3, wisely build the team. Wisely build the team. Takes a lot of wisdom because you got to get the right people on your team. You get the wrong people on your team, bad news. Don't do that. So for Nehemiah, the time has finally come to begin rebuilding the wall. As I just mentioned, Nehemiah's inspection tour revealed the enormity of the task before him. He knows he cannot do it alone, so he wisely builds a team who will build the wall. He wisely moves from me to we. Nehemiah chapter 3 records the various construction responsibilities assigned to different people. Now, we're not going to read chapter 3. That's your assignment for this afternoon. Real quickly, doesn't take long. Read through chapter 3. But here's what you're going to notice. And if you like to mark your Bible, here's what you're going to mark. A recurring phrase that goes something like this. And next to him, and next to him, and next to them, and next to them. And what this is describing are all the different workers along the wall, along the construction site. And so you got some over here working on this gate, and then next to them are people working on the wall, then next to them people are working on this gate, and then next to them, and next to them, and next to them. And it is a powerful picture of a team, a beautiful picture of teamwork. And here's what you'll learn, that if you will begin by developing a team, that at the end of the process there will be so much buy-in and so much pride, the good kind of pride, the pride, look what God did through us to build this project. Now, like I say, we don't have time to read all of chapter 3, but I'm going to point out a couple of very important things. You see in verse 1 and in verse 17, a very important principle. It refers to the priest and the Levites. This is the Jewish priest and the Levites rolling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty. It's always great when you see religious leaders who are leading by example, not just with their mouth. You know, some leaders lead with their mouth. Hey, y'all do this, y'all do this, y'all do this. Call me when you're done. I love it when leaders roll up their sleeves and get involved in the task. Verse 8. Verse 8 says the goldsmiths and the perfumers. These are kind of the artsy people, okay? The artsy people. Well, we can't use artsy people, you know, because they don't know how to get their hands dirty. Nehemiah said, hey, goldsmiths, perfumers, y'all take care of this section of the wall. I love it. No one is left out. Everyone has a part. How about verse 12? Verse 12, you see that it was a family affair. There were men, there were women. There were even, one guy had his daughters working on the wall. Must not have been teenage daughters, but that's another sermon. Family projects. You know what I love? Right now, Pastor Matt, our missions pastor, is developing mission projects that we're going to do as a church locally, but they are designed where the whole family can get involved, and it can be a family affair. Here's a biblical example of that. Oh, hate to tell you the bad news, verse 5. Verse 5 talks about lazy nobles. There was one group of nobles who would not put their shoulder to the task. What's the lesson there? There's always going to be a few. Doesn't matter what organization you're in. Usually these people have a lot of suggestions, but they don't get involved. They never show up on work day. Lazy nobles, you're always going to have them. So don't let that kill the project. Just get rid of the lazy nobles and get new people on your team. All right? Oh, verse 14. This is a funny one. A guy named Milkijah. Milkijah is a ruler. In other words, he's kind of upper level. But guess what? This ruler volunteers to fix the gate to the toilet. I am not kidding you. The dung gate. You say, how did a gate ever get called the dung gate? Well, in the city, that's where you took out, it was the toilet, okay? That's where everything went out. Well, that wall, the gate was broken down. So Malchijah was the ruler who volunteered to fix the gate to the toilet. Isn't that amazing? Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do the work. Had I been Nehemiah, I would have signed the perfumers. But that's just me. What's the lesson here? Here's the moral in your notes. You can't fulfill a dream if you don't build a team. You can't. No way. You cannot fulfill a dream if you don't build a team. You can't do it alone. Man, I look around, this is my life purpose, Grace Community Church. 18 years ago, I had the wonderful privilege of planting this church. I very quickly learned I could not do this alone. So in the early days, we had key volunteers step up and they ran all the ministries. I didn't have time to do that. They ran and developed all the ministries. It was exciting to see it happen. Then, as we had enough funds, we began to hire staff, listen carefully, not to do the ministry, but we hired staff to equip volunteers to do the ministry. And then we added more staff, some full-time, some part-time, always with the understanding, if you come on staff, you can't do ministry. Your job is to train and equip and resource others to do the ministry. And now, I don't know, we're probably 1,800 members strong here at Grace. We've got a ministry handbook out there. Jake is going to talk about it in class 301 tonight. It is filled with team members who said, I have a passion for this. Let me lead it. Help me develop a team. And that's where the staff comes along and helps you build a team. But I guarantee you, to confirm your life purpose, carefully, and wisely build a team. Ever been to an airport watching a 747 take off? If you've ever watched, like if you go to DFW and you watch those long runways and you watch a 747, about halfway down the runway you go, that sucker is not going to get off the ground. That sucker is going to crash. 3/4 of the way down the runway you go, it's going to crash. There's no way. The wheels are still on the ground. It takes an enormous amount of horsepower and fuel and energy and everybody inside gripping their handrest to get that sucker off the ground. But you'll watch at the very end, it'll take off. But it takes an enormous amount of energy. It is the same when it comes to your life purpose. That runway seems to go forever. The preparation seems forever. It's hard work and it's getting buy-in and getting the right people on the team. But I promise you, I assure you, if you will be patient with the patience of Job and wait for the end of the runway, you'll be amazed to watch that 747 of your life purpose take off and fly. A major step in getting your life mission off the ground involves confirmation. This step, it may be tough, it may seem to go forever, but the time and energy invested here is absolutely critical. But once you catch God's vision, and then once you get good solid confirmation, you're well on your way to finding and fulfilling your life purpose. Let's pray. Well, Lord, thank you so much for Nehemiah's example. Thank you for his wisdom, his patience, his incredible insights on how to get confirmation. Lord, I pray for any of us in this room, if we are at the beginning stage of a dream, of a project, of a task, a ministry, that you will, Lord, give us the same wisdom you gave Solomon, so we will confirm well. This is our prayer through Christ. Amen.